right, welcome everyone. My name is Ari. I'm the founder and one of the support team for Awkwardly Zen. And I am so excited to have everyone here this morning for this awesome event about true crime and human design. Charity is awesome at this. And as she mentioned that there were some things that she noticed as she was doing her research about true crime, I think she thought, oh my goodness, Ari's going to think I'm weird. And I was like, ooh, you have to tell me everything. So for those of us who are part of that true crime fan base, this is a really cool way to see how certain things in spirituality can cross over into that why bad things happen. So before we get started here, I'm going to go over our guidelines for Awkwardly Zen, and then I will pass it over to Charity. So welcome. Awkwardly Zen was created as a space to be awkwardly yourself on your spiritual path. So our number one thing is love and light, please. There is no right or wrong here at Awkwardly Zen. You can disagree with someone, but please hold space for them to have their own point of view. We're all in different places, so be gentle. We do tread lightly with anything too controversial, except for today, we're going to talk about murder. So if that is something that is offensive to you, of violence, if anything like that is hard for you, please blip out when it gets to that point. So that is definitely a trigger warning. The viewpoints of our speakers and other members may not be the viewpoints of Awkwardly Zen itself, and you are absolutely responsible for your own experience here. So do your own research before you try anything that's ever recommended at Awkwardly Zen. And also, again, if it's not vibing with you today, if you're not feeling it, if something triggers you, go ahead and go. You don't even need to tell us, just blip out, come back and see us again sometime. Every single event we have is different. We do try not to should one another here. So if it comes to a point for some reason that you're giving any sort of advice, let's talk about our personal experiences instead of you should do this. Some of our events, including this one, are recorded, but we ask that you do not record it privately. This will be available, just so you know, on awkwardlyzen.com for our free members and our paid members. It's available a week before it is available for anyone else on YouTube. So make sure you go grab that free membership at the minimum so that you have access to this recording in the next couple of days. How much you participate today? Charity's going to have some options for you to ask questions. The easiest thing is to put those over in the chat so that we can keep track of them in order. And then when it's time, we'll pull them in to the question there. Or she will set aside some times where you can raise your hand physically or raise your reaction hand. But in order to keep the flow going, let's wait until she asks if there's any questions, just to make it a little bit easier. And if you want to show support or agreement, or be like, yes, me too, we throw our hands up in a hand waggle. So do that shaky there. Please, if you're doing anything distracting, turn off your camera or we will turn it off for you. And as always, in an Awkwardly Zen event, please remain clothed at all times. So all of that being said, I am going to go ahead and pass this over to my lovely friend Charity. If you have not had a human design reading with Charity, I cannot recommend it enough. It was a life-changing event for me. Human design is so big and so much going on and so many things to keep track of. And somehow this magical mind that we're about to delve into here keeps track of all of it and can immediately find these things on your chart, which is pretty cool. So Charity, I'm going to actually have you just right off the bat, will you put in your contact information in the chat? And also, could you tell the people who are watching from home where they can find you? And then we'll get going with the event.
Yeah, you guys can find me. I have a website, lessonsofcharity.com/human design or -human design. I do offer discounts for AZ members, which you can see in the chat with different levels, depending on which one you're at. And my readings are not your typical human design reading. Most of them do like an hour. Mine is usually 2 hours. Sometimes it goes to 3 hours. I don't really limit the time. I just want to make sure that whatever you guys need in the chart is told. So I don't, because a lot of times people just focus on a couple of things and I'm more like, here, let me tell you about your whole entire life. And if there's certain events going on, you know, if you're in a certain cycle of your life, I will also mention that too. And sometimes we go off on tangents with that. So just to be prepared that if you book a reading with me, plan for a couple hours. And it's always recorded. So because it's a lot of it, and I always say it's a lot of information. So just wait and sit with it. And then you're welcome to ask me questions later on. So just to give you a little bit of background on why I am doing on Criminal Mind. So I am my sun sign is in the 8th house, and I have 3 other planets in the 8th house. The 8th house is dominated by sex, taboo, death, psychology, and trauma. And that's been a big theme in my life. And in high school, like, I don't remember, I think it was like a sophomore or whatever, I watched the movie Copycat with Sigourney Weaver. I don't know if anybody's ever seen that, but she was an FBI profiler. And I became obsessed. I'm like, I don't, what she does, I want to do. And I started taking psychology, criminal justice courses in high school, went to college to be a forensic psychologist. I was convinced that's what I was going to do. And then in my second year of college, I realized, wow, like, I'm empathic and I'm going to be sitting across from these serial killers, profiling them and interviewing them. And I'm so, like, I got really scared about it because I was like, if I take on that energy, will I be able to handle it, or would I go insane myself? And so I was like, I'm going to be a magazine owner instead. So that's kind of how I went. But it's always been a part of my life. I've always studied psychology. And since my Uranus oppositions came into play, I have come into a purpose of human design and figuring out kind of like how the mind works, which I've been taking a lot of refresher courses in psychology. It's, particularly focusing on like abnormal psychology. So I will incorporate a little bit of that, but the one thing with psychology, and another reason why I didn't fully go into it is because the psychology feels very contradiction. It's like there's a lot of I don't knows in psychology, and I'm more like, but I want to know. So that's kind of how I come back to human design with it. And also, before I forget, you guys, there is a lunar eclipse tonight at 10:25 Eastern Standard Time. It's a super full moon, and everybody can see it in North America. So guys, look for the moon tonight because it's going to be red. It's going to be pretty. All right. So let me just bring up my little presentation. Okay, so I'm assuming most of you guys know what human design is, but just a little refresher course. Human design is your energetic blueprint. Basically, it's the version of like your DNA, but in your energy way. So it's based off ancient systems of astrology, the I Ching, Kabbalah, chakras, mixed in with epigenetics and quantum physics. You can use human design for self-discovery, trying to figure out, why am I the way I am, or your personality and where things come from. It could be a guide to help you make decisions and lead a more fulfilling life. And which what we're focusing on today will also reveal your shadows and the not self, as it's called. So in human design, it's broken down into the true self or the not self. The true self is your original nature. It's what your chart's about. It's living in alignment, as they say. Your not self is your conditioned nature. There's a duality in everything. So everything's light and there's dark. The point is, though, is that you have to embrace both of it. So an awakening occurs when you surrender to both of your true self and your not self. But it's it's surrendering to your shadows, but not allowing them to control you. So it's accepting them for who you are. So everybody has conditioned states, no matter what, sometimes, and you can have shadows that are expressed in some gates and in the centers. But to be in the not self is to be in complete opposite of yourself. So if you look at this chart, this would be their true nature. And this is their fixed energy here. Wherever you're colored in, you're fixed. Wherever you're white, it's not consistent. The energies can come and go. But if you're living as a not self, you are the opposite. So wherever you're white, you're living as if you're fixed and meeting resistance in those areas, and then allowing your fixed centers to be conditioned by the planets or whoever you're around. The not self is created within for 7 years. So your parents have to do with it, your friends, your family, your society, environment. I believe, though, that just if you base off of developmental psychology, I think, though, it can affect you up to age 14, because between ages 7 to 14 is where most people create their identities and their self-esteem is most affected. It's so, the will centers defines your self-worth and things like that. So I think there's still some room for conditioning in between the ages 7 and 14. And the not self line keynote. So this is where your profiles will come in handy. And if you have gates, whatever the line, the gate is, this is what the not self keynote is. So someone like, I am a 3/6. So I could say that it's in my true nature to be ashamed of like the things that challenge me and being disconnected from society in a way. That would be me in a not self way. A lot of line 1-3s are talking about insecurities, which you'll see this when I go through the charts of the people, and I'll focus more on that. So I took, I found the charts of about 312 criminals. And out of the 312 criminals, 214 of them have committed murder or were serial killers. The remaining 100 were, which they could qualify as murderers or serial killers, but I did not go into that much detail into each of their stories, but 100 of them were either Nazis or criminal like fraud or burglary, things like that. So, because I was hoping to find, some kind of key element that like, oh, is it all manifestors are killers or is it all generators? And if I could figure out the key, then maybe human design will tell us why people have a criminal mind, which I realized that, nope, everybody's pretty much capable of evil. So if you look at it, the gray is in the general population, and this is out of the 214 profiles charts that I found. These are the statistics. So really it's pretty consistent with the general population. Projectors are a little bit higher, same with generators, but overall it's pretty consistent. Also by authority, again, pretty consistent. 55% had emotional authority, which is the most common authority as well. So again, pretty consistent. Incarnation crosses, this is your purpose of being. So these are the top 5 incarnation crosses, along with for murderers and serial killers. These are part of the top 5 in human design too. There's 15 of them that are in the top 15. And so it's pretty consistent again with the numbers. And I'll explain a little bit when I get into it, because you'll see 3 of these, how they work. The only thing that was unique about it is the channels. So sorry. The channels are, again, so 1st, 2nd, 4th, and 5th, these are the most common channels in the general population. However, 659 is the channel of mating. This is a very primal, raw energy, and it really has to do with sex. It's meant to, people that have this channel are usually mothers or fathers. I mean, they're meant to reproduce, and it can be very primal in nature. When I say like caveman style, like we have sex to have babies. So in a shadow state or in a reflective state of that could bring up a lot of sexual aggression if you're not used to the energy. And it's also responsible for a source wave of emotional wave, because it's tied, your sexuality is tied to your emotions. So it's not surprising that this was the #1 channel in the theme of killers and murderers, even though it's only the 20th most common channel in the population. So hopefully that makes sense. And so the other ones, it seems normal that this would be common. The only one that's missing out of here is charisma, which I will talk about. It's overall, out of all the charts, the 314, charisma was #1 for everybody. So I just want to make that clear that it's not, it's still common. The mating ranks down a little bit. So hopefully that's not confusing, but so let's, I guess, dive on in. So first one is Jeffrey Dahmer. Pretty much one of the most infamous serial killers. He was known as the Milwaukee Cannibal. His story is very interesting in a way, because most violence or killers or serial killers I would like to say evil is made, it's not necessarily born. Usually there is a pattern of abuse or some kind of traumatic event that happened that causes a lot of violence. Now, can someone just be naturally evil, if you want to call it that? Yeah. And he's kind of one of them. He doesn't really have, his family life was pretty normal. Like, I mean, it's not, he had a dysfunctional family, but nothing like dysfunctional as in like, Ted Bundy, that was born to, his grandfather was also his father, or that he was abused in a way. His parents were not physically abusive to him. They were pretty neglectful to him. However, he didn't really experience anything. There was some, his father claims that he was molested at age 8 by another boy. However, Dahmer denies that. He says he doesn't remember it. He doesn't think it happened. He really became a center of focus due to his like graphic and how he killed, because he dismembered a lot of his victims and he also ate them. So, and he kept the body parts in his house. He also would try to, he would inject acid into their brains and hoping to make them zombies and sex slaves. So a lot of his drive came from this sexual aggression. He was homosexual himself, but he hated about it. He didn't want to be, he didn't know why he was. And he felt ashamed about it, which he's a 1-3, so that's not surprising. So when you look at his chart, now he's an emotional manifesting generator. Manifesting generators are very energetic beings. It comes from this 2034 is what makes him this emotional manifesting generator. And then he obviously has his emotions defined. As a manifesting generator, they can be very impatient and have a lot of urges in this energy. There's a lot of energy for busyness. As he has the 2034 here, which is that charisma channel. This is the channel of busyness. They have a lot. They need to be busy, busy, busy bees. And he also has the incarnation cross of the sleeping phoenix, which is a powerful incarnation cross within itself. But with that channel of charisma and also this 1034, he has exploration here too, and this awakening. These are called integrated circuits. This integration is a very individual circuitry. It means that they're very deeply individual, and so they can sometimes come off as like they don't fit in or they don't belong. They could be very different in the way they interact socially. And I make this as a point is because so Dahmer was evaluated by multiple psychiatrists. Now, I want to make it very clear that whatever they came up with does not mean that there's violence tied into this. So it doesn't mean that if anybody's diagnosed with this, that they're a violent person. However, they believe that he had the signs of Asperger's, which is a form of autism on the very low end of spectrum. And they say that because at age 4, he was a very lively and happy child until about age 4. All of a sudden, he became very socially withdrawn. The way he walked, he had a very rigid walk, and something about like the way that his knees, it showed that that's a sign of autism or in a form of autism. Now, I want to make it clear too that Asperger's is a very low form of autism, and there is no, he was not, that's more about field studies that were done after this. Like he wasn't diagnosed with that during the trial. So this is afterwards. They did want to do brain scans for him and he was ordered to do brain scans. However, I don't know what happened to them. I looked and I could not find if there was anything that came out of it. I don't know why. And they actually did keep his brain after he was killed in prison. But his father got a court order demanding it to be cremated. His mother wanted to keep it alive to get studied, but his father wanted it cremated. So there is, they don't know if there's a biological nature behind this. Most serial killers do have a different type of brain. A lot of them have a lot of more gray matter and their amygdala tends to be bigger than their hippocampus. So could it have been that way? You just don't know. Which is, I would like to know where those scans were. So maybe, I don't know if they ever did it or what the point of it was. So now with, also with the manifesting generator, like I said, there is this, like, they get a lot of urges. They want to do things, they want to be busy and they want to go about it. Now he's missing out of the one circuitry here, gate 57. Gate 57 is connected to 34 as well as 10 and 20. When you do not have gate 57, but you have this incarnation cross of the sleeping phoenix, this is somebody that needs to be busy, needs to burn their energy, but they don't know what to be busy about. Without the 57, it causes some kind of like, they just don't understand like why they have this urge to find something to do or to focus their energy on. They just don't know what it is because they don't have that intuitive nature behind it. So with that, the incarnation cross is made up of your top 4 gates here. Okay, so this is 70% of your personality. So this is why I'm going to focus on these because this is really what makes up with a person. Now, gate 20, which is the gate of in the now, being present in the now. This shadow is very in the repressed nature. It's about being absent, separate from humanity in a way, like keeping yourself disconnected, not really being authentic into your true self. He's a line 1. So this is something that would have made him insecure. And a line 1 is superficiality when it comes to gate 20. So this is an intermittent theme that it's not really, it can come and go basically, and it's frozen by this intense unconscious fear that temporarily displaces them. It's withdrawing of consciousness from the body, and it's kind of, it's like each time it happens, it kind of creates this like mini death in a way. And this can be brought on by intense shock. Now, I want to make a point of that by saying that he has gate 51, which is the gate of shock. Now, gate 51, so at age 4, he suffered from a double hernia, which I'm not really quite sure what that means, but he had to go through a surgery, and they never told him what he was having surgery for, what was the pain being caused from or anything. They literally just drove him to the hospital, and he got this massive surgery. And he said that was something that was very traumatic for him. Now, that would have been very shocking for him. Now, at age 4 is when his symptoms of this antisocial personality kind of manifested. So if this could have sent him into that kind of shocking shadow state of gate 20. If and also he also has like the fact that that gate of shock causes shocking moments in a person's life. That also means, by the way, that they can cause shocking moments in other people's life, which is something he obviously was very good at. He definitely shocked the entire nation, right? But the reason why too is that the gate of shock is in the 6th house, which you guys can't really see in human design. I'm pulling a little astrology here, but the reason why I think that's important is because the 6th house has to do with health. So the fact that his health was affected during this time, and that was something that caused into it, definitely could have taken that gate 20 and brought him to a shadow state. Now, in the reactive shadow of this gate, the mind will do the opposite in this repressive nature. It will be this energy that needs to move. It needs to be self-absorbed into something, and it's extremely that this deep connection between the shadow, it really translates the mind to activity. It will get your mind going in a way and make you insecure about the moment that's in the now. It will cause this extreme restlessness and this urge to like want to do something, which he talks about a lot, that his it's really, there's an interview with him in 1993, right before he was killed in prison, on Inside Edition, and it's very intriguing to watch his mannerisms. And this is the reason why they felt that he was Asperger's, because he has no emotion when he's speaking. He's very monotone, like even when he talks about himself. And one key thing too is that he knew that there was something wrong with him, but he said, I don't know why I am this way I am. I can't tell you. It was just these constant urges I would have. And also he said, I want to make it very clear that my parents are not responsible for this, nor is society. I have no idea why I am the way I am. And which is something that's important, because gate 55 in the shadow state actually does do with blame, which I'll show that in a second of how that comes out of. But going back to this 2034, like I said, this is the whole channel of Prisma. 34 in a shadow state, 34 is the gate of power. So this is this energy of dominance, knowing that you are a very powerful person. As a line 1, the keynote to it is the bully. This is someone that uses their power for the wrong reasons. This is like the body gives the energy, but the mind is kind of this victim of wanting to, your mind controls your body. And so even though if your body doesn't want something, your mind will still say, yes, you want it. And so this is where this conflict of his like guilt and shame came from. He did not want to be homosexual. This is where it would come out of. This is where that power would try to take over, because the body, that's what the mind wanted. Maybe he thought that his body didn't. One thing too is that he tried to control the body a lot. The reason why he wanted, I'm sorry, my dogs keep doing all these things. They're distracting me. Okay, so the mind controls over your body, basically. Now, one thing is that in the reactive side of this will cause anger. This is a shadow that will manifest into this bully or bossy nature. They be very forceful around others. Their main this is in a force, they use their communication as a way to be an inappropriate behavior. So one thing too, in high school, people thought he was kind of the class clown. I mean, you wouldn't have really known that he had these deep desires. But the way that he would do it he would cause these like scenes, would just all of a sudden start shouting or screaming or pretend that he was having epilepsy to get people to react and to draw attention. Like this is another area that this would have came out of, because this was him trying to just like control the environment in a way. But one thing is that with this shadow is that they're not really aware that they're being bullied. They're not aware of their own power. So in the shadow state, that they're not even understanding why people are reacting the way they are to them. They don't think they're being bullies, and it can cause this rage that will make them feel misunderstood in a way. So this is where the condition, they're not really aware of what they're doing or how their actions are being perceived. If you're going over to the other side, gate 55, this is a very spiritual gate. This is somebody that's experiences spirit through emotion. It constantly moves through these cycles of hope and pain. So they go through these kind of moments of hope, and then all of a sudden you can experience a lot of pain. It's often perceived in a shadow state as being very dramatic, and feel of lack of passion. And it's interesting because, so in a shadow state too, this can be emotional eating. And so I want to, like, where his drive of cannibalism came from, he said that he ate his victims because he wanted to feel connected to them. He thought that if he ate them, that they would become a part of him, they would become one, this connection he would have to them. Now, could that relate to that emotional eating? Possibly. I'm not going to say that. There are some things in his chart too that I'm not going to have time to go into today, but if you look at underneath the chart, there's certain tones and colors that can drive how people interact. He has a lot of appetite and taste in his chart, but there's a lot of explanation to kind of go behind that. But the only thing that the correlation with that is that there was one other chart that I had in regards to cannibalism, and this person also had a lot of taste and appetite in his chart underneath it. So there was some correlation, but that's a whole nother side of the subject to things. So I'm not going to go too much into that. But now at gate 55, like I said, it could become in the reactive nature of someone that blames others for who they are. I became this way because my parents made me this way. I became this way because society made me this way. Now, Ted Bundy, which I'm going to show you shortly, is very similar to Jeffrey Dahmer's chart. He also has the incarnation cross of the sleeping phoenix, as does Mother Teresa. So again, I'm going to say, like, not everybody that has a cross or this way is necessarily going to be in a shadow state. So let's make that very clear. But Ted Bundy did have more of a reactive nature to this gate 55. He did blame other people. He said, I am the way I am because society made me this way. And all the violence that you see on TV, this is why I am the way I am. So, but again, Jeffrey Dahmer was not like that. Now in the repressive nature, this kind of manifests as this mindset that one is a central victim within their own drama. They create their own victimization within themselves, meaning like they want to find reason of why they are the way they are. So they'll say, I am this way because, it's like they create an illusion in a way. So with him, like I said, when he had this drive to want to cast out his like evilness or why he was homosexual in a way, this is where he would have created this story around it and made himself the victim. Like, I don't want to be this way, so I have to come out and find a different way to release it. So that's kind of where it goes into that, like I said, victimization. Now, the biggest gate I would say in Jeffrey Dahmer's chart, this is probably why he became a very sexual drive behind his crimes, was gate 59. This is a very sexual gate. He also has 59 in his Pluto. Pluto is Pluto is a very significant effect on the chart because it is your inner truth, your deep inner truth. And so this is something that really is a part of you. And to have Pluto is aligned 6 and 4, this means that he was disconnected from his sexuality. He was unaware of probably how much it impacted him. And then to have it as a line 3, he was also ashamed of it. So this makes sense of where this darkness came from in a way, of what his and his drive and his urge is, because he wasn't fully accepting of what he was. This is like, and then also 59 in Pluto is in the 8th house as well, which is kind of ironic like I said, that has to do with death and taboo and sex. So in this reactive nature, this is somebody that takes his anger out on sexuality or wanting to control the intimacy. Now he has a incarnation cross of the Sleepy Phoenix 2, which 2 has to do with intimacy and relationship. So in a shadow state, when this incarnation cross is going to come out, it's going to come out through intimacy. And so again, all of his actions or his victims were people that he did because he wanted to literally take them and rape them and then kill them. It's so weird for me to talk about this in like such a normal conversation. Sometimes I feel like I'm like, hope you guys know this does affect me. I don't think it's okay. So, but you know, it's also interesting though, because like in the reactive state of the gate 59, this is somebody that can be very intrusive too. This is somebody, this would drive this need to want to dominate somebody else. And that was his biggest theme of anything that he says. He's like, I wanted to control them. That's why he wanted to make sex slaves. That's why he was trying to, he wanted to keep them alive. But he wanted them to be submissive. He literally said, I just didn't want them to move when I was having sex with them. So it was just like obsessive nature to want to dominate the other person, because in a way, the repressive nature and the reactive nature, it stems from this rejection. Where that rejection came from, maybe because his parents were neglectful for him. He did get a little bit casted out when his brother was born. They mentioned that too. But again, I feel as though like what he experienced wasn't something that should have driven him into this state of violence. So this came obviously from something else. Now, when you have, as your centers are as well shadow areas. So when you have an open mind and an open head like this, or undefined mind, open head and an undefined mind, this will cause you to really, your mind will really control you. It can cause a lot of anxiety, and the thoughts and stuff that you have will affect all of the other areas in the charts. Now, he also has this undefined root center, which is this pressure center. Both the head and the root is a pressure center. So with that being said, the pressure center, or the addiction to the root, is this addiction of adrenaline, these rushes. They get this like this risk-taking adrenaline. So if he was feeling pressure from his root, he would have, that adrenaline that he got it every time he committed a crime would have fed that need. And then in the head, you have this pressure of these ideas and how you think, and this addiction to a thinking. And he really did, you know, it directs their mind. It's this kind of like when they think about the point of having an undefined head and ajna is to be able to look at things from a different perspective, to have these open, to not really be certain about the things that you have, and to be able to change your beliefs and ideas and create this kind of doubt. When you live in a shadow state of it, is being certain, thinking whatever you think is true. There's very rigid thinking, and there's no way to adjust your thoughts in a way. So when the things that he thought about himself, like nobody would have been able to convince him otherwise. It was just who he was. Now, one thing that's interesting is that he was caught during his first Saturn return. Now, this is his chart, a Saturn return chart. So he was experiencing during this time, this incarnation cross of distraction. So, you know, most serial killers get caught because eventually they kind of mess up. They don't really, they become more and more addicted to what they're doing. And so they kind of mess up. And it really did, in the incarnation cross of distraction works in a way to distract you kind of from what's going on in your life, to move you into this next spot, like something distracting happens. Now, a couple of things was that with this gate 55, like I said, it was a gate of spirituality, right? So during this time, he had this incarnation cross of, channel of empowering, where it's 39 connects to 55, emoting. So this would have been taking those provoking or obstructions, or something would have stopped you in a way to bring you into the spiritual awakening and being more connected with source. Now, when he went to prison, he met somebody, one of the other inmates, and he became a devoted Christian. Once he was in prison, he really connected to his spirituality. He really, he started reading the Bible, and really came into terms with who he was, and was pretty much like, doesn't mean that and he said, you know, I would never have stopped unless if I wouldn't have been caught, I don't think I would have ever stopped what I was doing. And so this is kind of how Saturn works in a way, where it's a lesson, it's something that teach you, right? So if it wasn't for a Saturn return, would he have gotten caught? I don't know, probably eventually, right? But it's just something that's interesting to look at of how the cycles can work and cause you into these next steps into your life. Now I'm going to compare the charts. I'm not going to do one on Bundy in full because Bundy was a super narcissist and I feel like he would have loved it. So I'm not going to do that for him. I'm not going to feed that. But also because there has been a chart, this has been done before on him a couple of times. Denise Matthew on YouTube, she has a really great comparison between Ted Bundy and Mother Teresa. Like really, it's a really great video of somebody that you really are interested in. But I wanted to show you the difference between these and what motivates it. So like I said, with Dahmer, he has the incarnation cross too. So like I said, that has to do with relationship and intimacy. One second here. I'm like, how do I move this thing? Okay. So Ted Bundy has the incarnation cross of 4, which in the incarnation cross of 4, this has to have to do with this people that really are more dominated by power in a way. They encounter roadblocks or being able to want to move their energy. Now he was really one that he had the 57, right? So he had the 57, 34 and 1. And he also had this 31-7. You can see that he has 7, but he's missing the 31. This is that drive to want to be in lead and power and dominating in a different sense. It wasn't that he was like wanting to be sexually dominated. He had more of a bitterness towards women. And he was a legit sociopath, but he had 59-5. He has 59-3. 59-5 is Casanova. This is like this attraction. Like people with the line 5s, like people are pulled to them. And so if you think about how people reacted to Bundy, a lot of people were like, oh my God, yeah, he's a serial killer, but he's super good looking. And it was a big thing. Like his looks and his attention was a big thing, but that would make sense because in a way, but being a line 5 is also exalted. So this is a benefiting energy. He just used it obviously in the wrong way. Now, one thing that's interesting is that when it comes to Mother Teresa's chart, obviously she was more in line with alignment, but she has the same incarnation cross as well, which incarnation cross of 3 has to do with really this strive to being close to others. It's really wanting to take that energy of the gate 59 intimacy, but dispersing it amongst humanity as a whole. So it makes sense of why she did what she did. This is really about, you'll come to these awakenings in your life and you can be triggered through the intimate relationships that you have throughout your life. Now, it's interesting because her 59, 55 are in her personality, meaning that she was consciously aware of this energy. So she was more connected to spirit. It was more grounding for her versus on both of these guys' side that their 59, 55 was something that was unconsciously driven. So just to kind of keep that in mind, that can kind of show you how different the charts can make. I hope that makes sense. Do we have any questions so far? I feel like I see a lot of chat numbers. I don't know how to get rid of the little thing here, but what questions before I go to the next person?
So we did have a question about, do you know if law enforcement or government use human design as a tool when they're going into all of this?
I probably not, because human design wasn't discovered until 1987, which really didn't come to the public until 1992. So they definitely would have used it for Dahmer or Bundy. I don't know if they currently do or not. I mean, we'll go through that. And at the end here, I'm going to kind of show you a chart of somebody that could be suspected. And then I guess you guys can decide if law enforcement should use it or not.
Great. Thank you.
Anything else?
The question that we have right there, unless anyone else wants to raise your hand and ask a question right now. If not, we'll have Charity keep going. Okay. And remember, if you're not following all this, because it is a ton of information and Charity's like amazing brain gets stuff in order and runs with it, we are recording it. So you will have access to it again. So you can go to awkwardlyzen.com and join that free membership or one of the paid ones so that you'll have access to this recording to go back over it.
Okay, next, Charles Manson. I figured I had to do a cult leader since we always talk about cults and Awkwardly Zen, that we are not a cult, we are not a cult. I'm sure a lot of people are aware of Charles Manson. He's responsible for the Helter Skelter. He created a cult during the 60s when there was a lot of energy around white supremacy, and like he was a white supremacist himself. he was really fixated on this idea that Helter Skelter was created around this doomsday, that he believed that the Black population was going to kill all of the white population. Where he came up with this idea, who knows, right? But his story is a little bit more related to why he kind of turned into violence. His mother was an alcoholic. He was in and out of prison throughout his life. He committed his first crime at age 9. He showed very clear signs of conduct disorder, constantly aggression, and he was thrown into around, I think it was after this age 9, he was put into a boarding school for with Catholics, where they were very much aggressive in the way that they disciplined. So he is which I'll go into in a minute. Now they said that he didn't technically murder anyone himself. However, he basically guided everybody to kill. But there was a couple of murders that I guess he was committed of in a book that they said he was responsible for. But the most famous ones were the murders of actress Sharon Tate. That's really kind of what put them into the public eye. But for him, now he is an emotional projector. Now, this is significant because his childhood, like I said, his mother was an alcoholic. He was in and out of boarding school. He was very, very neglected as a child. He really wanted the attention from his mother, but his mother never really gave it to him. Now, as a child, projector children really do need it. Neglect is the worst thing a projector can go through, because a projector has this need to be recognized and appreciated for who they are. No matter how old a projector is, they still need to be recognized. And because their whole strategy is responding to an invitation. They have this aura that brings people to them. They are here to guide. And, so as a cult leader, technically, he was kind of doing what he was supposed to do, because projectors are guides. He just did it in a dark sense, of course. But they can come off as, being very passionate about things, but they will surround themselves around people who will recognize them for what they are. If they're not living in their strategy, they're just going to take whoever they can find and kind of wrap themselves around them. So it's really this kind of like, and their emotional theme when they're not in alignment is bitterness. And this bitterness becomes cumulative throughout their lives. If it is not fixed, it will become worse and worse and worse and worse. And it will get to a point where it will be very hard for them to be deconditioned, which is something I forgot to mention, by the way. When you are in a not self state, you do have to be, they call it deconditioned. It takes 7 years supposedly to be fully deconditioned. I think it probably depends more on the person. I'm sure that some people can be deconditioned quicker, hopefully, maybe. But it really, you have to go through this whole awakening process and stuff. Now, by the time Madison got in prison, he definitely, he never had an awakening. He was very bitter throughout his whole entire prison, and he stuck to who he was. Now, he's also a 2-4. So as a 2-4, with the keynotes that I had mentioned, they are unaware of feeling unaccepted. They get shocked when other people reject them or resist them, and they consequently will gradually shut themselves off into their own busy world. Like, meaning as in, and this is, like I said, a shadow state of it. So if you're, so they, in a way, they don't understand why people would reject them. And this was a big theme in his life. Now, he wanted to be a musician, right? So he kept trying to like audition, and he would constantly get rejected. And this was something that he was pushing through. He wasn't waiting for the invitation, of course, right? So, but I think he almost made it as something as a musician, but then something happened where, this, I forget the story behind it, but that resulted in a lot of this bitterness too. Now, he also has the incarnation cross of explanation, which is also one of those top incarnation crosses that I had mentioned. This is falling out of touch with inner knowing, because this stems from this channel right here, this 2343 structuring, right? And this was also one of the top channels. But this is somebody that's like, really, their voice is very powerful, because the way they speak is connected to gate 43, which is the inner ear. It's this inner insight. It can be clairaudient energy. it's like they get these messages and they're supposed to express them. However, they have to be waited for the invitation to express them. If they try to push their ideas on other people before that, people will look to them as like being a freak. It's called genius to freak, meaning like when you speak at the right time, people will look to you and be like, wow, you are the smartest person in the world and everything you say is right. If they say it at the wrong time, people will be like, what the hell are you talking about? Like, you're crazy. Well, we don't want to deal with you. Now, in the shadow state of the incarnation cross too, it's like this reactionary voice too that wants to incite an emotional reaction, which he basically was very much trying to do. I mean, he really believed in his head there that there was going to be an uprising, that this doomsday was going to happen. And so with that 2343, this energy really it's supposed to be a gift. It's supposed to be a gift to humanity, that what you say, that if it's formulated correctly, people will follow this person. So this is where that kind of attraction comes into this cult leader kind of energy, right? But it's important though that they're not supposed to force it. They're not supposed to force the insight or the energy that comes from it. So if he was trying to force his intuition or his insight that came from it, this would have pushed out where he would have created these ideas or this kind of like formulating his own story that wouldn't have been really true. He would have been giving birth to this idea of like incorrect insight, basically, because it's coming from the mind. And as the mind, you're not supposed to be making any decisions that come from the mind. And then also too, when you have this channel in a shadow state, you rarely perceive the ideas from other people. So if somebody said to him like, hey, you're not a good singer, or hey, your ideas are crazy, he's going to be like, not true. They're right. I'm good. I'm awesome. And that's just because that would have been the state that he was in, which he was very much like that. Now gate 4, it's also part of this card, Nixie cross. This is like thinking. This is also another very big thinking gate. This is like being able to come with ideas and solutions. The reactive nature is like this need to want to answer questions and to be this kind of prophet in a way. This is someone that will, the answers will give them kind of this sense of security. However, if they don't get the answers, it will become this disappointment. If they don't hear what they want to hear, basically it will overtake their mind, and it will cause them to really hone in on, like they'll look for all these details that aren't there, or they'll find things that really aren't there to make sure to come up with the solution or the answer. And then they find this opportunity, whatever, this pent up intention, and they'll find a way to release it in a way. Now he also has this channel 1949, which 49 is the gate of revolution. And so when it connects down to his north node, but to have this is also why people would have been attracted to him. To have channel 1949 is literally like, is a magnet for other people. It's this unique aura that is called synthesis, but it's really this channel about like, this comes out of the marriage, divorce, anything like this. This is the need for intimacy, but it creates a sense of aura that people will always feel good around these people. These are also the empaths. This channel, gate 19, is like animal communication, animal empath, like being able to really feel the needs or participate in the needs of others. And he obviously did that with his clan, or whatever you want to call it, his cult. And it's really, in the shadow state or in the non-self form too, they will also become a slave to their tribe in a way. They will do whatever the tribe needs, or they'll come up with ways of how to meet the needs, even if they're not able to. Now, this 1949 creates an emotional wave. So when you have a defined emotional center, you have an emotional wave that's tied to it. This is a tribal wave. This tribal wave is these kind of like tick, tick, ticks, and then it explodes and it goes back down to normal. It's a very predictable pattern. So, but the other one is 4130, which is a collective emotional wave. Now, this is what I think kind of would have been the wave that would have started the murders. Now, the murders committed the murders at the very beginning of his Uranus opposition. So this is a buildup of all these years of this anger and tension, and then all of a sudden it just kind of exploded. And that's how a collective wave works. It builds up and then it just, boom, it abrupts and it goes. Now, this is connected to the 3041. And this is a very pressured channel. And this is also this need for recognition. So again, he's being constantly rejected for his music endeavors, and he wanted to be this musician. Then also his ideas are being rejected, except for the people that are in his cult. And so this is building up and this need to want to be recognized. And then because a lot of I think the reason why he targeted certain people, the house had something to do, he wasn't targeting Sharon Tate. It was just that they were in the house at the time that they were trying to go after, if I'm correct. I believe I'm correct on that. But it was the owner was somebody that rejected him for his music, I think, but they were out of town and the Tate people were in there, like staying there for the weekend. I believe. I could be wrong on that, but I try to do as much research as I could, but you know what, your brain can only take up so much violence in a short time, right? But this is like the false self or the not self of this channel of recognition is really a person that will indulge in his desires. So if he was like, it's like, he didn't care at that point of what he just, whatever energy he was feeling from this and all that pent up rage and that bitterness, and all of a sudden it just literally exploded. And so it's just kind of interesting to see how it works as a channel of emotional. Does anybody have any questions on that? I don't even know what time it is, or how am I doing?
Yeah, so we are at 11:52 our time. So we're getting close there, and this is a really big question. So I will also post the link to your human design class that you did before, because the question coming up, but as concisely as you can, is there a way, can you explain the chart just a little bit as far as like the red and black lines and like the illustration of it for someone who's not familiar with human design?
Yeah, sorry. So yeah, design, wherever you see red is your unconscious. Wherever you see black is your conscious. So meaning like you are most likely aware of whatever's in your black. And so the lines connect to the gates. Okay, so 41 is in his conscious north node. And then we have like here it's like the 4, it goes to his 4 here in his ajna, but it's an unconscious line. When it's unconscious, like you're not really aware of these traits until your Uranus oppositions. They grow kind of up to them and you become more aware of them, they become stronger. Anything on the design side is usually inherited. It can be from epigenetics, past lives. And that is, like I said, wherever it's not, I'm sorry. And then whenever you see it in a area that's white, it means that that energy is dormant until something's activated it. And the gates, by the way, relate to the I Ching, which are 64 hexagrams. So each gate has a specific energy tied to it. And then the arrows are another whole section, so I won't go to that too much. But, and the centers are, this is your head, ajna, throat, identity, will, emotional center, root center, sacral, and then spleen. And I'm gonna go a little bit more into the centers here with our next person. So I hope that helps. Do I need to go more? Are we good? I think that's enough.
I mean, I think it's an overview. I think the biggest thing is somebody who is not an expert on this, because Charity is absolutely an expert, so it's really hard, is that each one of those things have their own meanings. And so that's why it is a super complicated thing to learn about. So that's, I can only encourage a reading with somebody who actually gets it. And even after your reading, you might not totally get it. And Charity's constantly like, Ari, this is in your chart and this is what's going on, which is a brilliant thing to have. And actually we had a couple people offer for you to use their charts if you need them. And I said I would too, even though I feel like I have a lot of similarities with these people that you are posting about.
Well, I know that you have that incarnation cross of the sleeping phoenix. That's why I'm like, I want to make it clear that that's not a bad thing, but yours matches up, but
I'm not a serial killer. Okay.
No, and hers matches up to Mother Teresa's because yours is on the conscious side, not the unconscious side. So
okay, I'll take that. I'd rather be like Mother Teresa than like Jeffrey Dahmer.
Yeah, I know. I was like, oh, crap. But and I know, and I think you're a 2/4 too, aren't you? So, but again, it's good to see one thing I do want to be clear about the incarnation cross of the sleeping phoenix is that it's a very addicting, the person is very addicting. It is a amazing energy to have. It is such a gift to have this incarnation cross, because they really are responsible for driving a spiritual awakening into other people, but they can also resurrect them from whatever they need in their life. I mean, if it wasn't for Ari, I probably would not have been really outspoken about the human design thing. I mean, I read her chart, which caused me to be more involved with Awkwardly Zen. And so you can see how the energies work. But again, you can also see how, with Ted Bundy, again, that chart, I mean, that energy is so addicting. People became so addicted to him, and why it was so easy for for Dahmer to really get these victims to follow him, because it's just that kind of addiction energy. It gives this sense of like really wanting to be involved with that person. You really want to be in their energy. So is there any other questions before I move on to the last person?
Hold on, your mom has a question. Kat, your mom has a question. That's the cutest thing.
I
I've
know,
ever
really.
said.
You know, you have to get a reading and you have to make sure it's recorded and you got to listen to it over and over and over. And we totally get it. No. I mean, understand, I'm her mother. I hear this every day when I talk to her. Okay. Do I get it? No. I mean, I pick up a little bit every time. So it is big. How she absorbs this, I don't know. I don't think she got my mind. I don't know where she got it. But it is definitely not my mind. I do not have that skill. Anyway, I'm curious about, how did you figure out that incarnation cross?
Oh, the incarnation cross makes up the top 4. So whatever, like you have the incarnation cross of rulership, Mom, but in this one, it's the top 2 gates, or top 4 gates. These are your sun and this is your earth. So your sun is what creates your life force. And then your earth is what grounds that kind of life force. So that's what makes your incarnation cross. And it makes a difference on where they are, if they're on the conscious side or the unconscious side, of how it affects the incarnation cross. Just to let you guys know, there's 192 incarnation crosses. So I have not memorized all of them yet, but it is, and I haven't really gotten into the quarters, because the quarters are what makes it the 4, the 3, the 2, and the 1. It has to do with when that incarnation cross came about. So,
and if somebody wanted to get their chart, they can go grab their chart anywhere and start exploring this a little bit.
Yep.
So it's just, if you're like me, I see that and I start reading it and then my brain goes buggy. So I'm grateful I have Charity.
Yeah, and you can go to like genetic. I use Genetic Matrix for all my stuff. This is actually a pro chart. You won't get all this information if you get a free chart, but you'll get your basics. Like you won't get any of this stuff, but you'll get most of it. But and just to let you know that if you're going to go down the rabbit hole, because that's what happens, is you go down a rabbit hole once you get your chart and you're like, oh my God, this is so interesting. Just know that I literally got into it when I first got into it. I was like, yeah, I went down this rabbit hole and I was so confused that I was like, F this, I'm not doing this. And then it just kind of haunted me. So I went back into it and then I studied it piece by, I got my first reading and then I understood and then I went into started learning it. So it really does help to get a reading. It doesn't have to be, if you don't want to use me, that's fine. I don't care. But I would recommend that you get a reading no matter what, because it will overwhelm the shit out of you. Oops, sorry. So it will overwhelm the stuff out of you. Okay. So anything else? I'm going to move on. We good? Okay. All right, you guys. So this is where I am going to do a little experiment, and you want to be law enforcement. Here we go. So Lizzie Borden, we're going to look at her chart and you guys can determine at the end if you think she did it or not. Because one thing is Lizzie Borden is known, there's kind of a rhyme that goes with her, which I'm not going to read the rhyme, but it has to do with the fact that she was accused of killing her father and her stepmother with a hatchet in 1892. It was a pretty big story. If you don't know, I'm not going to read the rhyme, but I know there's like a little nursery rhyme that goes with her story. But she was acquitted. She was found not guilty. And however, no matter what, she still was the prime suspect. They have no idea who else would have done it. She didn't have a tendency for violence. She was actually quite popular. But her father, so they lived in a very religious area. Her father was quite wealthy, but he did not like to spend his wealth. And her mother died about 3 years prior to these murders, and it was her stepmother at the time. And she didn't necessarily not get along with her stepmother, but her stepmother, she felt, only married her father for his money. And so there was some animosity on there. And her father was also very much would give money to his new wife and their children, and he would leave her and her sister kind of out of it, and they would get really upset about it. They were kind of like, listen, we want to be recognized for this too. So they would ask for the money, and it would be kind of like this kind of animosity that would build up. So before the murders, I'm just gonna kind of read you a little bit of their story, that in May in 1892, her father, there was this kind of theory that he killed a bunch of the pigeons in their barn with a hatchet, which caused Lizzie to was very, very much traumatically affected by that, because she loved the pigeons. She was very much a lover of animals, when she did die, she donated like $200,000 to an animal shelter. So they say like, this is like maybe happened or maybe didn't. They said, but if it was something that this was really quite, it was only a few months prior to the murder. So that's why they bring it up. But also there was tension growing in the family. About 4 days before the murders, she actually left the house. Her and her sister left the house because they were fighting with them. And it was only the night before when they came back. And she also received a lot of money from her father's death. It was like $9 million in today's money, I guess, what she received from it. Okay. But she was, like I said, acquitted. They couldn't prove it. There was no blood or anything. She didn't have blood on her hands or nothing. But the time that it happened, she was in the house. So it would have like literally like it was kind of an interesting story because there was no noise or anything. It was in the morning. It was like 10 a.m. Now, one writer did mention that they believe that she did it. I mean, everybody believes she did it. Like anybody you ask, they say she definitely did it. Sorry. Hey, stop. This is what happens. See, my dogs are also serial killers. They like to kill bunnies. So they see one and they go. It's so sad. You have no idea. But they are Airedales, so they hunt. That's what they're meant to do. Anyways, so with them, with this saying this, one writer did say that she could have done it in a fugue state, which means when you're in a fugue state, that means that you have kind of a psychotic break. It's a moment where you can literally black out and not remember anything. If anybody loves the Marvel movies or shows, the latest show, Moon Knight, talks about this. It's called a dissociative order. It's when you literally can become a completely different person and you will have no recollection of what happens. You can have one psychotic break, fugue state throughout your life. You could have multiples. It really depends on where the drive of it coming from. They tend to happen when you're in some moments of distress or like you need to kind of save yourself, and so you literally just shut yourself down and somebody else will come out. It's interesting. So again, now she is also an emotional manifesting generator like Dahmer and Ted Bundy. She has that 1-3 profile that I had mentioned, which is about feeling ashamed or insecure. And they try to make things right by, to feel more secure about themselves. Now, she has this incarnation cross of Laws too, which was also one of the top incarnation crosses for the killers. What's interesting is for women, it was more common. And there's not very many women serial killers or murderers, but in the one, I think it was like 30 charts I had, this was the most common incarnation cross. The incarnation cross with Laws is really somebody that comes into someone's life when they need to like be structured with rules. Now, in a shadow state, this is someone that's imprisoned by life of rules, constraints, limitations, distractions, isolations. They have these fears regarding personal value, and it will disrupt relationships and prevent new ways to collaborate. So this incarnation cross will kind of come out through this whole, like when they're being imposed in rules and they don't like. Now, like I said, she did not like the fact that her father would not share their wealth. And she was very confined by these rules in the town that she lived in. It was a very Catholic type town, or I think it was Catholic, and they were very strict in the rules. So she would have been feeling that kind of restriction, and she had to leave the house, I said, for a few days. Now, in this incarnation cross, we got 3, 56, 50, and 60. 360, this channel here is a channel mutation. This is also one of the top channels in the criminal chart. And I have this channel. So I am very well aware of this channel. And when you have this channel in your chart, it's called a format energy, meaning no matter what else you have in your chart, this is going to override everything. This is a very pulsating channel. It's an on and off. It can cause these moments of being down in depression. And then all of a sudden you kind of, bam, get this whole new sense of life. And the next thing you're going to move into. It's a really mutative energy. It's supposed to be this up and down throughout your life, which my life has been very much like that. So it makes very much sense. But when it's impressed, it can be this lack of structure, this need of in a person's life in a shadow state. This is somebody that can cause, it can cause disease if they're not holding on to the limitations correctly, because 60 is the gate of limitations, meaning you're going to be stopped. There's going to be things that stop you and limit you of what you want to do. And so this can cause a kind of lack of structure. But in a reactive state, this can bring out a very angry nature. If they feel like they are being controlled, these people cannot allow other people to question what they say or do. They will behave beyond reproach, And there's this over reliance on like form and structure, and they're going to want to try to bring back that form of how they feel it should be. And they react accordingly. So like I said, it's a pulsing energy. So I want to keep that in mind. Could she have done it? Well, if she was in a down state or repressed state with this, and it was coming out through this anger, maybe. Now, gate 3 in the shadow state is a chaotic mind. And with it being gate 3, she would have been feeling this kind of ashamedness about that. It's also a very destructive. It's got this fear of life, and it expresses itself as rage, like pure rage when it's in a reactive state. It's this chaos and disorder, and the things that make it very predictable. There's nothing that they can't predict, like no rhythm or purpose. Then they want to bring that chaos back. Now, this can also cause disease, and she did die of pneumonia, but it could have been coming out of this. We don't know. Gate 50 is actually it's a special gate when it comes to family. This has to do with the tribe and family. It's really providing nourishment for the family and wanting to be there for the family. Now, in a reactive state or a shadow state, again, this is somebody that can be a fear of unconscious anger. So they're not even aware of their anger. It's like this anger that kind of builds up, and it's one that wants to be taken, like, because they feel like they're being taken advantage of. And they have this sense where they are not accountable. They don't feel like they should be held accountable for any of their actions. This is really expressed when this like rage comes out, it can be expressed in a very ugly nature. And gate 56, which is the other side of that too, this is an overstimulation. So when this comes out in the reactive state, it's being overstimulated, and this energy and this urge to want to like really they need to express this kind of the stimulating. People with this gate can kind of they're really great storytellers, which, by the way, when she was interviewed for the police, her story was never accurate. She kept changing it. So that was one reason why they were kind of like, maybe she did it. But these are people that in the shadow state, they can also have this kind of anger because it's really being left into this fantasy world. They lead lives that they're kind of denial of their inner truth. And they have these behavioral patterns that avoid these feelings of reality. And so they kind of dissociate in a way. Now, if you look at her chart from the date of the murders, how was she feeling this day? Could she have been in a fugue state? Possibly. She was not used to having her spleen defined, right? This is an extreme amount of energy for one person to tap into in one day. Your spleen is responsible for your fears and your instinct, right? So all of a sudden, she does not have gate 34 normally either. And 34 is that gate, that power gate. So all of a sudden, she got this surge of power and energy that she is not used to feeling. This 57, 34, it connects to the 20, and then would have connected this surge of energy. Now, again, this is something, gate 57 is a very powerful gate. This is the gate of the psychic. But if it's coming out of fear, it would be this fear of the future. So in the way that it's like this fear that wants to make that they bring, in the way the fear will drive this quick decision. It will make them react in a way where they'll decide to do something that's probably not in the best nature to do. It's because it's rooted in fear. Now, this will also, and then because of this reaction to, a quick reaction usually leads to more misery. So whatever they decided in that moment is never really fully, is not the best thing. So it will lead misery throughout their life. And it can be also in a way where it will create turmoil as a part of its own awakening process. So that did really, I mean, she never did never live it down. I mean, everybody thought no matter what, she was ostracized in the town. They believed she did it. In a way too, what's interesting is that the gate 28 is something she was not used to feeling either. And now understand, when these transits come in on the planetary level where you're not used to having it, you feel them times 2. It's not just like a normal energy. So it's really when you have like your spleen defined and having all this energy, she felt all this fear, everything that she was fearing till times 2, and then they want to express it. So even like I do not have a defined spleen, so I can always tell when the planets are lining up in a way, because I'm like, oh, it brings up all this anxiety and this fear, and I'm like, oh, great. What's being activated today? I can usually tell in a way, because in there was like, I think it was back in October, of last year. I can't remember when it was, but everybody was feeling it. It was when the spleen was activated and it was going through all these gates, and you could tell because people kept saying like, oh, I just feel like everybody was feeling the same way. So that's kind of how it works. But also so with gate 28, this is a risk-taking energy. This is a fear of purpose and a fear of death. But in the 28 is this wanting to take, like, you get to these urges where it releases a darker side of your nature. Whatever darkness you have is going to come out during this time. And then you're going to want to drive that through taking risk. A lot of people do it with, it's called gambling in the shadow state of this reactive nature, but it becomes this quickly identity, like they have to release this kind of pressure, and they can't stop moving. It's this like unpredictable, fast pace of spontaneity. And you have to understand too, everything that comes out of the spleen is spontaneity. It's this moment. It's not a consistent moment. It happens once and then it goes. So it's very in the moment. Gate 32, also in the shadow state, in the reactive nature, is very aggressive. It is this urge to want to fight. It is fighting for what you believe in, and it's fighting, but in a way you're going to do it because you're trying to control the situation. The fight does not come out of a fight of purpose. It comes out of this fight of control and wanting to be in control of the situation. And they basically fight for no purpose. They just want to fight. So
Charity, can I break in with one question just for clarification? So you're saying this is the chart from the specific day of the murder?
Yes.
Okay. Just
and time. So the murders happened around, the murders happened around 10, anywhere from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. So this is at 10 a.m. So this is where she would have been feeling. This is exactly what she would have been feeling at the time. And she would have been experiencing the incarnation process of refinement at that time, which is this state of, in the shadow state, is this state of profound lostness and being stuck. It's like repeating these mistakes and these harmful attachments and wanting to react in reacting to bad habits or behaviors. So that's kind of all of that in a nutshell. I know I speak, so I wanted to give a little bit more time for questions. So I guess now the question is like, did she do it? Like, if you, off the base of the information that you have, would you think, okay, yeah, she did it? Because you could easily say, was she in a fugue state? Possibly, she could have been. I mean, the drive of that much energy to have on one day without that, something that you're not used to, could probably drive some major, and there's other things that are stimulating that. But you have to remember too, I mean, that I just focused on the shadow states. It doesn't mean that that energy can also be very positive. So that's up to you guys to decide. So could you use this in human design? Could you use it in law enforcement? Maybe. I mean, I think about it as in, you know, line 5. So one thing with Ted Bundy too that's different than Dahmer is that he's a 3-5. A lot of people that have line 5s in their profile, their one big thing is their reputation. BTK also has 3-5. When it comes to line 5, that they are going to care what people think about them. They want to be known and they want to be recognized for what they've done. BTK messed up because of his reputation. There was an article that was written about him. He got super like, he was like, no, that information is not correct. So he wanted to, this is way after he stopped killing. He got caught because he had to correct his reputation with the paper had written about him. And he sent it from a disk drive from a church that he was working for. So basically, so I think about like the Zodiac killer. I would bet that he would either be like a 2-5 or that was so obsessed with his reputation. He needed to be heard. He needed to be, you know, and that's just a theory. I'm not saying that's 100%, but just from what I've learned about human design, I would say he definitely has a line 5 in him, but a lot of people have line 5. So it wouldn't really narrow down like a Zodiac killer. So.
Charity, so there is a couple questions, but could you again mention where it is that people could find their chart? You can
go to genetic matrix, like you see this right here. I can put it in the chat.
That would be great if you wouldn't mind. Geneticmatrix.com, and you need to know your time of birth, correct? Yep. And your date of birth and your location of birth. Mm-hmm. If you do not know your time, there's been suggestion of using a pendulum to find that out. And then also some days that matters more than other days. Is that right, Charity?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you guys, if you don't know the time, like you can get, you could go to a recertification astrologer, but also you can ask your pendulum, or you can have Jillian find it for you because she's really good at that. Or you can also look at the times, you know, if you know kind of like, oh, I was born in the afternoon. The only thing is if you don't have the exact time, you're not going to be able to get your arrows, or you would not be able to figure out anything below the chart. Like I was talking about for health and things like that. You have to be at the exact time for that. Some days are like, you could check and it could be, doesn't change at all. You'll be able to figure out a majority of things. However, there are some days where it's like literally like 5-minute difference and the whole entire profile changes. So it just depends.
Okay. And then, with the light and the dark aspect. So you look at, and I've been joking this whole time that I have a lot of these things, right? So in my chart, there's a lot of that, the charisma stuff, the cross, all of that. So what makes certain people go to the light and what makes them go to the dark? And if you know you have things in your chart that have things like that, can you set yourself up for success or guard against these things? Or is this something that's not in our control?
So human design is very much similar to genetics. And I want to compare the two. So in genetics, everybody has predispositions, right? So there are 2 genes that are connected to violence. So they look into a lot of the media likes to kind of, what do you call it? Fantasize it a little bit or like exaggerate it a bit. But there is one called like the serial killer gene, they said, right? Which is the MOA1 gene. And then there's also another one that's tied to aggression on the Y chromosome. Now, just because those people that have these genes can become aggressive or become violent, but it does not mean they're going to. It is a predisposition. So again, in your chart, you have any kind of predisposition, whatever you have a predisposition to it. Who you become is really going to be based off of how you're raised. So again, there is one guy that was, he's a psychologist, like a clinical psychologist, or maybe psychiatrist, I can't remember which. Now, if you were look at his brain scans and his DNA and his family history, which he's a descendant of Lizzie Borden, by the way, he found out, he did all this research and he found out that brains look a certain way in these scans. And he looked at his own brain and he realized, holy shit, I could be a serial killer. He had the brain of a serial killer. He had the genes of a serial killer. However, he was raised in an extremely loving and caring and supportive family, and he never became violent. I mean, his great-great-great-grandfather was like the first murderer in some town. Like he had so much history of violence, but because he came from a loving nature. Now, this is the same thing, how it works with human design. Who you become, you know, and sometimes, especially with generators, most of them they're not self in the beginning, because generators are here to be awakened, and you have to be in your not self to be able to become awakened. To become that violent or that dark really has to do with more of like your family disposition or where you were exposed to. But I could also say too that, you know, just because people can go 2 ways. I mean, just because you're exposed to trauma and I could say easily my family, growing up, my father was a really horrible person. I could have become a completely different person, but I took a different path. However, I'm a 3/6, which makes me a super, super old soul. So I was probably like, if you listen to Michael Newton's book on the journey of souls, he kind of talks about, depending on how old your soul is how you'll be able to handle trauma as well. So, you know, when you're a 1/3, like Dahmer, he would have been an older soul. However, he still would have been kind of at this like college graduate level. So he could have been younger. If you see like someone like Adolf Hitler, he's a 5/1. He's a super, super young soul. And to have that much power that he had, he took that every experience he had and he turned it into something very ugly. So again, it really comes down to, there's a lot of factors involved. It's not simple, unfortunately. I wish it was just a switch and I could find it and then you could just turn it off.
Well, and one of the things that I'll say when I had my own reading, one of the first things when Charity and I first connected before we were friends, she sent me this like brief, hey, here's all the stuff we're going to go over, and my brain immediately popped. So I stopped reading it. But one of the first things she talked about was, you have so many emotional things, like you must be super emotional. And I was like, who is this woman coming to tell me who I am, what's going on? But what happened in the reading is she explained to me what it is in my chart that has caused that my whole life, the up and the down and the all over. It gave me this freedom of, I've always my whole life gone, well, why am I like this? Like, why can't I just do this differently? Why can't I just be like this? And I'm just not built that way. So now when I get emotional, I'm like, okay, well, just allow it for a second and it'll go away in a second. I don't have to try to fix it. I just need to deal with it. And that has been such a huge blessing in my life. Like, it was life changing for me to have that. So I'm just so grateful that I've had that there. And I genuinely laugh because I hear these things knowing that I have them in my chart as well. But I'm sure that a lot of people who do things like run communities or step into businesses and things like that do have a lot of these in their chart.
I mean, and it's interesting too, because like I said, there really isn't too much of a consistent pattern. However, there are some things that are kind of ironic in a way where, like, if you look at some of the charts of mobsters or gangsters, a lot of them have the community channel. Okay. Like, that's kind of where it comes out of. But, and then also if you look at ones with financial fraud and stuff, they have the money line channel. So it's, you can see it of where it comes from, but why they go to this dark path, unfortunately, there's a lot of factors involved in that. And this is why, like, I'm personally studying abnormal psychology, but even in abnormal psychology, there are so many holes in it that they really just don't know what possesses certain people to become a certain way. You know, and it is hard because you do want to, in a way, empathize with some people, even though they've done horrible things. I mean, if you look at, like I said, Bundy's life, it's not surprising how he turned out the way he was. I mean, to find out that your father is also your grandfather, and like, that's a lot to take. And so some people just can't handle that. And it doesn't make it okay by any means, or excuses of why they act the way they do. However, you know, and it was kind of an awakening to myself too, because like I said, I have the channel of mutation, and to know that I have so much up and downs in my life. And knowing that that's part of who I am it does make you accept it in a different way. So does anybody else have any other questions? I mean, I did good. I have 8 minutes left. I know I spoke super fast, but still.
Yeah, Michael has a question.
Yeah.
Hey, so on the chart that you did on the day of the murder, I didn't know you were able to do that. So I don't understand that. How's that possible? What's the mechanism behind it? Like,
so there's planetary transit. So if you think about it this way, so how the universe works, or in astrology, planets kind of go through this cycle of the gates. So when it's called the mandala, but it's like it goes in this rotating year. So New Year's for human design is actually January, I think 22nd or something like that. But each day there's a different gate going in the sun and each planet. So that if you choose the day that you want, like, I can explain this, probably just show you guys really quickly so you guys can see it. Again, you're going to have, if you want to look at the transits, you can go into genetic matrix, but you have to have what do you call it? A pro account for it. So if you were to look into genetic matrix, like, this is my HD chart, but there's a way that you can go into foundation transit. I think they do offer it for free, but when you go into the foundation transit, you'll be able to see what's going on a planetary level. So it will tell you everything. Now, each person will be affected differently. It depends on whether or not you have certain gates. So like for me, I don't normally have a defined will or defined identity. So for me right now, like, I probably have a lot more motivation. I can get shit done that I normally can't because this is energy that I'm not used to having, and I'm going to have it times 2. And the will center is like my Achilles heel. It's like my one that really could just drive me to do things. And this identity is really trying to find this kind of like path in life. So I might, like, this was the perfect time for me to do this because I really had to hunker down and put this presentation together. And normally I wouldn't have found the motivation to do it. So each day, it doesn't change. It depends on what planet it is, right? So right now in Pluto, gate 60 is going to be there for a couple of years. So people are going to be feeling gate 60 that normally don't feel it for a couple of years. When it's in the sun, you're only going to feel that gate for a day or two. I'm actually going to, hopefully with my will center, is start doing kind of like a weekly transit for love members or love and light members on the Awkwardly Zen. So each week I'll kind of give a recap of what to expect of energies that might be coming in that you're not used to feeling. I'm hoping to start that in a couple of weeks, but to keep that in mind. That answers your question?
I think so. I think I get it. That's interesting. It's sort of like you can predict your energy flow.
Mhm.
Wow.
I mean, that's where
Wow.
it kind of goes into, like I said, there's cycles too.
Oh, okay.
It's like everybody goes through these cycles between ages 28 to 30, for anywhere from 38 to 44, and then it's like the Saturn return, and then your Uranus opposition. Like these are all like significant cycles in people's lives. So you'll go through. I think when we were reading your chart, did I talk about your Uranus opposition? I feel like we did. So maybe, but it's when each of them have these kind of moments that causes these changes in life. And that's why everybody goes through like a midlife crisis. So
awesome. All right. Up, Kat, and then we're gonna wrap up.
It's kind of like dogs, you know, when there's a full moon and your dogs are just crazy. That's why Ivy did what she did, Charity.
oh yeah.
Full moon, isn't it? So yeah, the dogs react by the moon because the dogs are driven by the moon. So kind of the same idea is watch your dogs now because there is a full moon now. So watch your dogs.
Absolutely. Watch your dogs, that's for sure. And just so you all are aware, Charity does do dog charts. So Valerie and I were together this last week and I got to hang out with her dog and she was telling me all the things that Charity found in her dog's chart. So that was really cool. So Charity, again, people can find you at, tell me your email or your
website. It's lessonsofcharity.com/human-design. Or you can find me on Facebook, even though I try to not to go on Facebook as much anymore. But yeah, I'm only Charity Mainville in the world. So guess what? You can find me pretty easily.
That's right. So lessonsofcharity.com. You can also find her on awkwardlyzen.com on the partner page. So if you forget that, you can go click over there and find her. And again, she offers discounts for all of our members, whether you're on our free level or one of our paid levels. And I really appreciate that, Charity. That's a really lovely thing that you're doing for our members for Awkwardly Zen. And again, if you have not seen the new awkwardlyzen.com, we have Charity to thank for that as well. She was the one who designed that and busted her tail along with Valerie to make that happen. So go check it out if you haven't been on in a long time. And if you were a member of the last site, you are going to just be transferred over to the free membership on the new site as well. So you just need to sign in and you'll get access to content, including the recordings of our classes that we record a full week ahead of when they're on YouTube. So make sure you go get that free membership no matter what, so that you have access to that, plus the other awesome content that is on there. And then if you're interested in one of those paid membership levels, you can see all the different things that you get for those. So I want to thank Charity so much for being here today. Some fun stuff coming up, you guys. We have psychic development class tomorrow. If you haven't been to that in a while, we've adjusted it a little bit. We do not break into private rooms anymore. So if that was the reason that you quit coming, come hang out. We still do the development in a big group. It's so much fun. And that's with Kendara. Then on Tuesday, we've got our Zen Zoom, as we always do. And then that evening for our Level Up members, Jillian is going to be coming in and doing, helping people figure out the names of their guides using her pendulum. So I'm super excited for that for our Level Up members. And then there's a lot of fun stuff coming this week. So there's a guided meditation. On Thursday, we've got John, one of our members, coming in to do Yoga Nidra. Right? Did I say that right? That's the meditation. So if sleep is one of those things you're fighting with, that might be something you want to check out. And we've got all sorts of fun stuff. So check it out on Meetup, check it out on awkwardlyzen.com, check your emails for the awesome weekly update that Charity is sending out for all of you, because she's a rock star. And thank you all for being here today. I know it's a ton of information, you guys. We don't expect you to know all of the things about human design, because you would have to study it like a mad woman, like Charity has for as long as she has, to have any idea what's going on. But it is pretty phenomenal. And I'm so excited that she has brought that back to our group, and I'm sure we will see her again. So thanks, guys. Have a good day.